I know that I want the attention to really be in the middle of the painting. As I get into the foreground, you can tell that I use more paint to help push the light into the middle of the painting. So I'm always thinking about the light in each phase of the process. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly how I paint this scene, but I'm going to explain why I make the decisions that I do. And it's this thought process that can be so helpful for you when you take on your own scenes. I want you to take a look at this reference photo. Notice how much is going on in the background. This is a pretty complicated scene with a lot of positive and negative shapes. And a positive shape is something that we paint directly onto the paper. A negative shape is something that we define by painting around it. And so in watercolor, since we are painting from light to dark, a lot of the lighter areas of the painting, we actually need to negatively paint. So we want to preserve the lightest parts of the scene through each phase of the process. A helpful tip is when you are looking at a complicated scene to really squint. Let some of that color information fade away, to let some of the detail fade away, and try to see your middle values as one large connected shape. And so if I squint at this reference photo, I can see that the middle value connects into here, connects into some of the background, connects into the boat, connects into here, connects to the shadow, all the way back to here. So if you can start to see those connections, you're already going to be gaining that advantage in learning how to simplify your scene. I try to not overburden my drawings with a ton of information. I'm really thinking a lot about the main area of the painting, and a lot of the background I try to abstract, even in the drawing phase. Now, once the drawing is done, that is when I wet down the back of the paper and the front of the paper with a sponge. Now, I'm not getting the paper soaked, I'm just getting it damp, because in this first phase of my painting, I like to take my time and work wet into wet. So the goal of this first phase of the painting is to lay in the lightest values of the scene. I'm laying in the sky. The first thing I do is lay in some light gray for some clouds. Now the sky isn't the main point of this painting. I want enough of an impression of the sky to enhance the feeling of the scene. So I laid in some light gray for the clouds, and now, while everything is still damp, I'm negatively painting around the clouds with some blue. At the top of the painting, I'm using some cerulean and some cobalt blue. That's the typical blue that I use for my skies. And I do have a list of all the pigments that I'm using down in the description below. As I get lower to the horizon, I dropped in a little bit of cobalt teal blue, and down here near the horizon, I'm just using some of that same cloud color and a little bit of blue as well. And there's the sky. It's a fairly quick, easy, simple impression, but once we get all the other information into the painting, it's going to be very effective. You'll notice that I'm laying in the lighter colors of some of these buildings that are in the background. In this first phase of the painting, it's all about the light. What are the lightest values? So I'm working my way around the scene, and this interesting red tower here, not sure what you call it, but it's a good opportunity to introduce some color into the scene. So I'm dropping that in right now when the paper is nice and wet. I'm also laying in the light side of the mast here of one of these boats. Something that was important for me to understand was to think of things in two phases, a light side and a shadow side. And in the first wash, we're really focusing on the light side. So we're laying in the light colors, letting them merge on the paper. And then when we go back into our middle value wash, which we'll get to next, we are laying in the shadow side. And having those two work together really help build a strong feeling of light in the scene. A light side and a shadow side. So I'm working my way down here into the boat. You can see that I'm laying in some of that nice teal for the bright part of the boat, laying in the first value of the water, understanding that a lot of this I will be going over again. Okay, so I want you to notice something here. I know that I want the attention to really be in the middle of the painting. So even in this first stage of my painting, I'm thinking through that. How can I make the light feel vibrant in the middle of my scene? And so this is a very subtle thing that I did here, but I cooled down the background of the path just a little bit. And here I warmed it up a little bit with more raw sienna. And then as I get into the foreground, you can tell that I used more paint to help push the light into the middle of the painting. So I'm always thinking about the light in each phase of the process. All right, and now I'm dropping in some light values for the figures. Now I want to let the paper dry, and then we'll come back in and take on that middle value connected shape. So at this point in the process, my paper has dried. We're going to work into the scene and find as many connections as we can within the middle values. And a helpful tip for this is two things. One, pre-mix as many colors as you can. When you are in this process, there's a lot to think about. You're thinking about edge, about value, about color mixing, all at the same time, and you're trying to keep moving before things dry up. Work from left to right, or if you're left-handed, work from right to left, and every time you reload your brush, come back to that wet edge and keep working in a very connected way. And I'm trying to see that big shape that I was talking about when I'm squinting at the reference photo. And I'm working over here on the left. I'm working into the roofs of the building, down into a lot of that junk, just things that are sitting around the building. I don't know what those things are. I'm trying to make an impression of what the background is. I think a big temptation when you paint in this way is to try to make things look like they should right away, when we really want to just see this as a background. It's hard to trust the process and understand that the painting is going to come together. It's not hinging on how accurate you are in the background. We can't really tell what the final painting is going to look like until we get all of our darks in and all the attention that's going to happen right around here in the middle ground. So keep that in mind, especially when you're painting things like the background, that it really is just the background and it's not going to have to carry the painting on its own. So I'm connecting that background into some of the shape of the boat, into the shadow side of this boat. And you're starting to see that light side, shadow side that I was talking about. Light side here, shadow side here. Light side here, shadow side here. Again, I'm tying the background into what is going on here and methodically working my way through the scene from left to right. And now I want to connect some of what I've painted here into the connected shadow that sweeps across the path here. So I'm going right into that, into some of the middle value over here on the grass. For a lot of the background, I've been using this Escoda Perla brush, which is really nice. It has a great point to it. It's really good for detailed work. And I'm using that smaller brush because there's so many small things that I need to paint. Well, when I get into the shadow shape here in the middle ground and foreground, you'll notice that I switched to a little bit bigger of a brush. I can get this bigger shape with less brush strokes. So think about the economy of brush strokes as well. Switch to a bigger brush when you need to. It'll help your painting have a cleaner, more fresh appearance. So now that I have those sweeping shadows across the path, I want to connect them into the middle value on the boat that's in the foreground here. And I needed a little more value on the water, and now I'm adding some value onto the boat. All trying to find connections all over the painting. And there is a look at the large middle value shape. And already we're starting to see that the light is becoming apparent in the scene. Now that we are through the middle values, we get into a very exciting part of the painting, the darks and the details. And once we get those darks in, that's when we really see the light become vibrant and believable. We've already done the heavy lifting of the middle values, and now we're into more of the darks. So I liked the mass of these boats. They create some great verticals for this scene. I'm also laying in the final value for these boats, and I love when we get a full range of values between lights, middle values, and darks, and now we're finally seeing all that hard work pay off. I'm looking around the scene and trying to figure out what the painting needs to be finished. This can take a bit of time, especially with a complicated scene like this, getting all those nice verticals in. As we get that contrast into the middle area of the painting, we can automatically see that our eyes are drawn here. This is where the story is, this is the important area. And all that stuff in the background is just a shape. It's amazing what a few of those directional lines will do to bring your eye into the painting. It shows you where to look, it guides your eye around the scene, and we are quickly approaching the end here. I wanted to put a little bit more value on the grass there, to do the same light side, shadow side feeling. This boat needed a little more value to really help that stand out. And so I'm using my larger round brush, and I'm using a mixture of neutral tint, raw sienna, raw umber. And so I'm carefully adding in the rigging. I don't want to overdo this, but these beautiful broken lines over that soft sky create a really nice effect and really bring a feeling of distance to the painting. It's really fun to paint birds in the sky. It just is. I don't know what it is about it, but they do help create that feeling of depth. A nice sharp mark over the soft sky brings that area forward, pushes the sky back. You don't want to have all the same size, the same distance apart. Trying to avoid patterns and making things look as natural as you can is really important. If you can learn to develop a plan for your painting and work methodically through each one of those steps, you will be more likely to have a result that you're happy with. The more that we can practice this process and understand what we're trying to accomplish in each step, the more successful that we're going to be. Have you ever been really excited about a painting and you get all set up, you find that right reference that you're excited about, and then it's time to go and you feel lost and you're not really sure why? Well, I have a free resource that I want to give to you today that can help with these problems. My 5 steps to plan a successful watercolor painting. I walk you through the crucial planning phase of your painting that will help you understand what you're going to paint first, second, and third. The planning is really so important, especially in watercolor. This medium is harder to correct. It's so immediate. So having that plan is very important. I send you a PDF that you can download. And the great thing about this is you can have it on your phone, you could print it out, and you can take a look at these crucial planning steps before you start each painting to ensure that you're thinking through these important things as you get started. You can download this right now before you start your next painting. All you have to do is follow this link here and download my 5-step guide to planning a successful watercolor painting.